could die, at least tell me your name.
It's not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
Bruce?
Batman Begins, directed by Christopher Nolan, was released in 2005. Nolan is well known for regarded films such as Memento, The Prestige, and Dunkirk. Most notably though is Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Do remember that Nolan is not the only creative force behind the trilogy. Cinematographer Wally Pfister, editor Lee Smith, and co-writer David Goyer helped Nolan create the films. Who gets how much credit? In this video, it'll be argued that all four technicians all share credit for aesthetic decisions seen in Batman Begins. It's a well-regarded film with Nolan at the center of the process. The first step in making a narrative film is for the writers. It is the work of the writers to compose the reason for watching. Then it's the role of the directors to recognize the good but also plausible ideas and to keep the bad to dispose of. This is how the director is responsible for the screenplay and why some of the best directors, including Nolan, are also the best screenwriters. Batman Begins is the first of the trilogy and was written by Nolan and Goyer. It is recognized by academic Peter Gutierrez in his Dark Knight Trilogy study guide that when analyzing Batman Begins, it is important to consider the inspiration sources because it is the origin story of Batman. Two influential sources were The Man Who Falls, which is a famous 16-page origin story by Dennis O'Neil, and Batman Year One by Frank Miller. The heavy inspiration from Frank Miller's graphic novel is important when considering the apparent shift in tone from the previous Batman franchises. Miller himself is synonymous with grit in the graphic novel world. Another important element in the trilogy is a lack of superpowers for all of Batman's antagonists. Ra's al Ghul is a villain in Batman Begins, which was a decision made when adapting the inspiration material. Realistic enemies brings the narrative much more in line with detective and gangster films of 1930s and 1940s Hollywood. Themes of terrorism are present in the film. Goyer is quoted saying that Ra's al Ghul was directly modeled on the infamous Osama bin Laden. While terrorism did not exist in the golden age of Hollywood, it was rarely utilized by the filmmakers of the day. Hence, Nolan and Goyer's screenplay innovates and deviates from established characteristics of the noir genre. Using the noir genre to interpret the Batman inspiration material was particularly attractive to Nolan because of its adult nature, fit for the narrative and also a large audience. He is quoted in Jason Nay's essay Dark Roots, stating he's very attracted to working within a genre that lets you take our everyday neurosis, our everyday sort of fears, hopes in ourselves, and translates them into this very heightened realm. That way, they become more accessible to other people. This is, in effect, is what the screenplay for Batman Begins does. It takes fear, crime, and terrorism and fights it. The result is an extreme example of Batman, a vigilante who exists outside the law and is able to single-handedly combat crime. For the trilogy and most of Nolan's films, Wally Pfister is the man behind the camera. Pfister has lensed a few narrative films outside the work he's done with Nolan, so it's difficult to differentiate which elements of style are inherently derived from Nolan's sensibilities and which decisions are from Pfister. Pfister did reveal in a 2012 interview with the Herald Tribune that he worked extensively as a news cameraman before getting into film. It can be assumed that his penchant for the handheld camera is derived from his background filming news. Handheld camera work is prominent throughout Pfister's filmography, particularly in Batman Begins. In addition, he also mentions his admiration for cinematographer Gordon Willis, who worked on the first two Godfather movies. Willis's style is distinct because of his high contrast lighting schemes. These sorts of setups are heavily utilized both in classic noir and in Pfister's work on the 2005 to 2012 Batman trilogy. By combining Willis's highly format lighting style and grounding it with this background as a news cameraman, Pfister generates a unique style which can be best described as a sort of heightened realism. Post-production is a little discussed element of the film's collaboration process. For Batman Begins, Nolan enlisted the hand of editor Lee Smith. In his interview with Pro Video Coalition, Smith remarks on how changes to Nolan's complex timelines do occur, but not very often in the edit. For Smith, the most difficult part of editing Nolan's films is how long to spend in each scene and when to move on to the next. Smith finds that these temporal decisions are essential in order not to detract from the narrative's intended impact. Another unique aspect of Smith's work is his working style. He is noted in Jody Duncan's Jess's book, The Art of Making the Dark Knight Trilogy, as a very fast worker, having finished the first rough cut of Batman Begins only a week after production wrapped. This working style, which Nolan shares with his cinematographer, left an indelible mark on the final film, which is extremely energetic and fast-paced. This is undoubtedly a conscious decision by Smith in his approach and by Nolan in his agreement with it. Batman Begins seems somewhat roughly finished, which contributes to its gritty feel, a common aesthetic in the cheap and quickly made B-noir films that Batman Begins is descended from. Another important element of Smith and Nolan's process is that they don't edit with temporary music. The result is there are no scenes in the film needing the score for effect, instead using the score to heighten the finished edit. Nolan is resistant on the contribution of his crew for the realization of his films. The art lies in his ability to recognize which ideas and contributions work within each film. For Batman Begins, he utilizes the talents of specialists like Goya, Pfister, and Smith, who were able to enrich his unique vision.